Alright guys, today we have another simple service video on the 3rd generation Honda Fit, and today we're showing you how to replace the AC condenser. This will probably be similar on the 1st and 2nd generation Honda Fit as well, so you can always follow along. Just look out for subtle differences along the way. I'll also show you how I diagnosed that it was actually the condenser unit, so stick around to the end because I do go through a few other options as well, and you may find some useful information there, even if yours is not the condenser. Go ahead and pop the hood. Condenser is a very common issue on the Honda Fit because of the size of these holes here in this grille. They really don't stop much road debris from coming up and hitting the bottom few inches of the condenser. So you see all that pock marking on there, but yet you look slightly higher and it's in perfect shape. So, and also you see that dark spot right there. That is where our leak is. So basically you can see that just over the years, all these rocks have hit the condenser. Now we did have the leak verified by a local AC shop. A lot of shops will offer a free leak check, and most of them will even tell you where the leak is coming from. So if you believe your condenser is leaking and you've seen a dark spot like that, you can always take it to a shop to have it verified if you've also checked the other things at the end of this video and are just still uncertain. I also got a quote from that shop on how much it would cost to replace the condenser, and they wanted to charge me $750. Honestly, I don't mind paying extra to have a professional do it, but that was a huge upcharge over doing it myself. The part was about 60 bucks, and it's going to take me maybe a couple hours to do this job. And on top of that, even if I have it professionally recharged, that should be about $150. So you can tell where the savings really come in. So if you are comfortable with a wrench and a screwdriver, I would suggest doing it yourself. We're going to start by removing this upper trim panel here, which will give us access to the grille. Remove these clips with a flat blade screwdriver by tucking it underneath and gently twisting until that pops up. Then you can lift them out. So on the clips on either side of the air intake here, I'm not 100% sure how to remove them properly, but I found that getting a flat blade underneath them and just gently teasing it up like that does seem to work. And then, as you can see, the center normally pops up on them. I'm not really sure how to get into the center to do it properly, so I would just pry it up carefully like I just showed you. I did figure out that we could pop the center up by getting something flat underneath. In this case, I used a wrench and tucked it to the underside, and then was able to press up on the middle, and that released the pin to where I can now pull this up with some pliers and remove it properly. On the underside of your bumper, you're going to want to release the 3 clips that are located in the center. One there, and one there. They're the same as the clips on the top. There's also one clip on either side underneath the bumper as well, of the same style. You also need to release this screw from the inner fender. Carefully release these clips away from the fender itself, and you've now freed up this side. You also need to release these screws right here on the upper corner of the bumper. As it so happens, this one was actually already damaged, so it slipped out past them, but if yours is in good condition, you'll need to release that screw to free up the bumper. Once you have these clips removed, there are also clips underneath the headlight here as well, and all it takes is a simple tug to free them up. You can see one there, and then gentle pull, and there you go. That has freed up the other one. We're now going to do the same on the other side here. Just a tug like that, and there we go. The bumper is now free, so I'm going to lift this off and place it on the ground, and then we'll have to disconnect the fog lamp wires so we can move it away from the car. There are actually 2 further screws that I missed in the initial thing, and you can see them right here and then the same on the other side, as well as the fog lamp connectors here. But I realize just by tipping the bumper down like this, I'm actually able to access the condenser and all of the hardware I need. So I'm actually going to leave the bumper partially on like this because it'll make my life easier reinstalling it. Now, before we remove the condenser itself, I should definitely note that before disconnecting the lines that run to it, you need to make sure that you don't have any pressure in the system. If you do still have Freon in there, you should take it to a shop and have them professionally bleed the system down. There is a proper way to dispose of Freon. You don't want to just let it vent out. So again, if you're not certain if you have pressure in there, I would take it to the shop first to have them check it. In my case, there's 0 pressure in with how big the leak is, and it's quite likely that if your condenser is damaged the way mine is, you're probably in the same boat. So here it is. This is the condenser. We have our 2 lines right there, and we have our 4 mounting points. One there, one there, one there, and one there. And all 6 of those bolts are conveniently 10mm. I'm going to start by disconnecting the lines, which is just this 10mm bolt right here. And you can see that this line is now loose, but I'm going to leave it resting in place just for the moment. Whew. These are quite tight, but they do come free. Next up, we're going to remove the bottom 2 bolts, but we're going to leave the top ones in place, still holding the condenser in. So while these are loose, they usually have some form of O-ring seating them in. So I'm just going to get a little bit of a screwdriver in here and just very gently pry it out. But doing my best to not mar up the surface too much. Just going easy on it. There we go. So I did actually have a teeny bit in there, but almost nothing. Alright, so we've removed these now. I've checked the O-rings and they both look good, but do be careful to keep these mating surfaces as clean as possible. This is, very important that it seals properly. So again, I'm keeping them from touching anything dirty or gross. You see how I've tucked that one off to the side there just to make sure it's kind of floating in space. So to remove these top 2 that are tucked behind this brace here, we're just going to use a ring spanner. If you have a ratcheting one, it'll make your life a little easier. Again, they are also 10mm. There we go. Alright, now that those are removed, I was able to drop the condenser down, and it just clears underneath this crossbar here. This little flexy piece of rubber, I'm hoping I can leave that in place and just kind of bend it out of the way as I pull this out. So basically I'm going to try and rock this forward and lift it up and out. So there we have it. You can see the condenser is out, and I mean you can just see all these impacts along the bottom here. So we're probably going to come back and add like a finer mesh screen behind the main grill. And again, this is our leak area right here that was just letting the Freon bleed out. So definitely was time to get a new one. So in here we have our shiny new condenser from Rock Auto. And specific for the 3rd generation fit, you're looking at model 10764 from the brand CSF. Alright, here's the new part. As you can see, it looks extremely fresh and clean. It does look like it is the correct fit. We have our top brackets here and our bottom slotted ones there. We have I believe this is the receiver over here, and then it does have these little plugs that you'll need to remove, and basically you want to just kind of pop these off right before you're ready to install it so it doesn't just sit there in the elements collecting dust. Now I'm going to slot this back in and just get it resting in place, and then we will put the top bolts in to hang it properly and locate it. Alright, the top bolts are in and tightened up, so this is now located. Look at that shiny new condenser in there, it looks good. So we're now going to do the bottom ones, and basically just my little extension here, I'm going to get that finger tight, and then I'll do the other side, and then we'll come back and tighten them down with the wrench itself. There we go. One. And these don't have to be wildly tight, they are just to mount this in place. So as you see, I left these on during the installation process just to keep dirt and stuff out, and we're now ready to remove these covers and put these lines back in place. So to do that, we need a Phillips head to remove this little tab, and then we'll remove the rubber bung. And then basically we're going to take this line, press it back in as far as we can by hand, and then we're going to use the bolt to draw it the rest of the way in. Now if yours are tight like mine, you could also use a socket, which I am going to, which conveniently is also a 10mm. Alright, we've got the top done, and I should note that these are actually usually pressurized from the factory, so when I removed that little tab holding it in, it did actually hiss as it released some of the pressure. It should just be air, so it's not anything scary when it bleeds that out. That's just to keep crap out of these things while they ship. And of course the bottom won't do that because now the unit has depressurized. Remove the little rubber bung. And now we're going to take this little guy, slot that back in there, and wiggle it in place. And you see how I just worked quickly there just to minimize how long the unit was exposed for. And we're going to thread this thing back in and nip it up with a wrench. All right, we are done, and it was as easy as that. So now we're just going to put the front bumper on, which is basically just the backward steps that we already did to take it off. And I don't necessarily need to show you guys and waste all your time with that. So I'm going to get that done, and then we'll walk through the diagnostic steps that I was telling you about earlier in the video. All right, and the bumper is back on. And as you can see, we got our shiny new condenser in there. So as you can probably tell, that was an incredibly quick job, very straightforward, very basic tools, and you can definitely do it yourself to save a lot of money. Now James and I are actually going to try and charge the system ourselves, which will be a separate video, but failing that, you could always take this to a shop and have them leak check and charge it for you. They'll still be maybe 100, 150 bucks, which is a lot cheaper than $750. But the hood's back open. So as promised at the beginning of the video, I'm going to show you which relay to inspect and how to inspect it. And then I'm also going to show you what to look out for with the AC compressor clutch as well to check and make sure that that's not the issue. So in the 3rd gen fit, even though your fuse box is over here, that's not where we're going to be looking. Your AC relay is actually back here in this little box at the back passenger side corner. Squeeze these tabs, lift that little lid off, and this is what we're working with right here. And this relay right here is the one that controls the clutch for your AC compressor. So your AC compressor is actually all the way at the bottom there. You've got 3 pulleys that are stacked, and it's going to be quite tricky for me to film, but essentially it's this little guy right here. So not this middle one, not this top one, but the very bottom one there. So what are we looking for though? Well, basically the way this whole system works is that when you kick your AC on, the clutch engages, which turns the compressor. That way it's not always turning the compressor even when it's not being used. So essentially there's a click that you usually hear when the compressor engages, and that was one of the first checks I did. Was when we turned the AC on, there was no click of engagement of the compressor. So obviously I had to check and make sure that the compressor clutch hadn't failed, and there's an easy way to do that. So essentially I'm going to kind of walk you through what I did. Honestly, it's a little bit of grunt work and I don't want to redo it, but it should be clear just from these instructions so that you can at least do it yourself. So back to the relays. I basically carefully pulled this relay out, knowing that this was the AC compressor clutch relay. And if you have a 2nd gen Honda Fit, this little same box will actually be located behind your driver's side headlight, and the relay layout is a little different for those. But if you Google it, there were a few results I found that did show you which relay was for the AC compressor clutch, so you should be able to find that information. If you have the 3rd gen fit like what we're working on today, this is the relay right here. So when you pull this relay out, there's 2 things we're going to check. We're going to check to make sure that the actual compressor clutch works first, then we're going to check to make sure that the relay is functioning properly as well. Now when you remove that relay, you're going to see 2 different sets of connections. You're going to see 2 oriented this way and 2 oriented this way. And this is the rectangular base of the relay. Essentially, the 2 that are oriented this way, so in the shorter dimension of the relay, are the ones that activate the relay. That's what generates the click you hear and continues the circuit. The 2 that are oriented this way are essentially the switch themselves. So there's the current coming in and then the current going out to the AC compressor clutch. So the way to test the compressor clutch is going to basically be to actually jump these 2 connections without the relay in place. And you can do that simply by taking a piece of wire, stripping both ends of it, making sure it's a decent sized loop to where your fingers don't have to be too close, and basically just poking it in there and hearing if the AC compressor clutch clicks. And you'll hear the face of, or you'll see the face of the compressor clutch actually move, and you'll hear a click from the actual clutch itself of it engaging. So I tested that on our fit, made sure that worked properly, and that verified that the AC compressor clutch is engaging properly, which was another, check to basically say it was the high-low pressure switch doing its job. But next up was testing the actual relay itself to make sure that the control side was working. So as we mentioned, the other side, the one with the pins going this way, was essentially, that's the control side. That's what creates the connection between these 2 pins. So all you need to do to test that is to put your 12-volt power and a good ground to those pins, and you'll hear the click from inside the relay, and that's it creating the circuit between these 2. So essentially, you want to look at the side of the relay, and you'll see a little wiring diagram that'll show power coming in and a ground going out, which is usually a line with a triangle made of little horizontal lines getting slightly smaller. That shows your ground. And then essentially the other side will be your power coming in. And basically I just took two little wires with alligator clips on the end. I connected one side to the positive terminal of the battery, and I connected the other side to the power in for the relay. I then took another one of those wires, connected it to the ground side of the relay, and I connected that to a good kind of body ground. I just found a little bolt that was pretty clean. And as soon as I did it, the relay made a nice click, and that let me know that it was engaging. Tested it a few times, click, 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 it was perfect. So that's one half of the relay tested, which is that it does click and try to engage when you apply power to that side. The key then is to test and make sure that it's actually then making a good circuit inside of the relay. So essentially what you want to do is take a, leave your alligator clips connected with that circuit now closed, and basically take your multimeter and set it for a continuity test, which you can look up a video on how to do. I don't need to tell you all the ins and outs of that right now, but essentially you're going to do a continuity test on the other two pins and make sure that they are now completing a circuit, and your multimeter should beep if it is detecting power through that circuit. And then the last part of the test, disconnect the relay. You should hear it click as it disengages as well. And then try that continuity test again, and if it doesn't beep, that means your relay is actually functioning properly. So in our case, we knew that the relay was functioning properly, which means that it should have been engaging the compressor clutch because we tested that that was functioning properly. And of course, neither of those things were happening, which now points to the high-low pressure safety switch for the AC system. So essentially, we narrowed it down pretty well to the fact that either that switch had failed and was basically just, kind of a broken part that needed replaced, or that switch was actually doing its job and protecting the system from having too low freon. And after taking it to get the pressure tested and the leak check done, we confirmed that in fact the high-low safety switch was doing its job, it was protecting the system, and that was how we, with 100% confidence, determined that it was simply the condenser that needed to be replaced, at which point, once we put it back in and recharged the system, everything should work flawlessly. So sorry that last part was a little bit quick, but that's not really what the whole video was about, so I do hope that at least gave you some direction. And of course, if you have any questions, go ahead and drop them in the comments. I'll do my best to answer them as well. And basically, I can maybe link out to any diagrams or anything I find if that would help too. But this is the part of the video where I say if this was helpful to you, please do like and subscribe. We have other Honda Fit maintenance videos on this channel, and on top of that, we also have some pretty cool cars that we work on alongside it, so if you're just a gearhead in general, go check them out. I think you might like them. Every subscription does help us. It really, really does help us grow the channel. And obviously all your likes help other people know that this was good content, and it helps the algorithm know to push our stuff out to other people. So we appreciate you taking the time to watch this video. We appreciate you considering subscribing, and we'll catch you on the next one.